The Committee on House Administration will come to order. I note that a quorum is present. Without objection, the chair may declare a recess at any time. Also, without objection, the meeting record will remain open for 5 legislative days, so members may submit any material they wish to be included therein. Thank you, Ranking Member Torres and members of the committee and our witness for participating in today's hearing. Every 2 years, when the House organizes a new Congress, the majority and minority conferences nominate candidates for Clerk of the House. This Congress, we're a few days delayed, but we got the job done. The Clerk of the House has an incredibly important role. The Clerk's office manages a wide range of responsibilities with 215 staff members in 9 divisions. These roles include managing day-to-day operations on the House floor, managing the House Office of Employment Counsel, and preserving the art and history of the House. We have the privilege of having Acting Clerk of the House, Kevin McCumber, joining us today. Mr. McCumber and I spent a lot of time together this past January as we're tallying votes for Speaker, along with Mr. Loudermilk and Ms. Torres and Ranking Member of the full committee, Mr. Morelli as well. I learned more about the great things the Clerk Office is doing to make our institution more effective and efficient. Today, the Committee on House Administration will have its first oversight hearing over the Clerk since 2019. Since the start of the 118th Congress, the Clerk's Office has worked with the Subcommittee on Modernization and implementing several useful tools. These include the new comparative print tool, collaborative drafting tool, and the lobbyist disclosure unique identifier. Most recently, the Clerk's Office began the process to create a new committee portal, a one-stop shop to help publish hearings and mark up details and assist our committee clerks. One of the clerk's main responsibilities includes managing what we refer to as the hopper, where members of Congress introduce legislation. Over the years, there's been a steady increase in the number of bills introduced by members of Congress. Over 8,000 bills were introduced during the first session of this Congress. This is a 10% increase in what we saw from the first session of the last Congress. Recently, a new e-hopper feature was created by the Clerk's Office in coordination with the Subcommittee on Modernization. This online portal helps streamline the bill introduction process. The Clerk's team processed over 100,000 co-sponsorships in the first session of this Congress and recorded over 700 roll call votes. Now the e-hopper tool helps legislative staff in the Clerk's Office collect co-sponsorships more easily and efficiently. The Clerk's team also posted over 5,500 committee actions on congress.gov, and nearly 150,000 committee meetings were transcribed, all during the first session of this Congress. It's safe to say we keep the Clerk's Office busy. As we continue to see a higher volume of legislative work, this committee remains committed to working with the Clerk's Office. We must ensure we're providing accountability and transparency for the American people and the legislative process. This hearing will also look at the Clerk's engagement with the House community, vacant office management, and the capacity to meet modern legislative demands. From what I have seen, the Clerk's Office is an invaluable part of this institution and works tirelessly on behalf of the American people. I look forward to hearing from you, Mr. McCumber, in your testimony today, and I now yield 5 minutes to the ranking member for an opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. McCumber, for being here with us today. The Office of the Clerk ensures the efficiency and effectiveness of legislative operations in the House, and we appreciate the hard work that you have shown and the hard work of all of your employees. We're here today to conduct oversight of the Office of the Clerk and discuss the operational changes and modernization initiatives underway to enhance the services provided to members, staff, and the American people. It is our responsibility to ensure that the Clerk's Office has the authorities and support to carry out its duties effectively. To start, I'd like to highlight the Clerk's commendable efforts in supporting the House through the disruptions that Congress and the country have faced in the last few years. The institution endured a once-in-a-generation pandemic that prevented us from physically gathering in large numbers, not to mention the major disturbance of January 6th insurrection. Through it all, the dedicated staff within the Office of the Clerk worked with grace, resilience, and professionalism, and I thank you for that. Thank you for your direction and all that your predecessor, Cheryl Johnson, under the most difficult circumstances, the legislative process continued, and members continued to perform their duties on behalf of their constituents back home. As it is often the case, from these challenges came lots of innovations. For instance, the launch of the e-hopper system allows members and our staffs to electronically submit legislative documents for the first time, making our legislative process more resilient and efficient. Mr. McCumber, as a fellow former 911 dispatcher, I know that you understand the importance of a reliable, robust information sharing environment. This mentality is evident in the solutions your office brings to the House operations, and it is crucial that we build upon lessons learned by your office and continue to improve accessibility and efficiency. The Office of the Clerk has also made significant strides in enhancing day-to-day House operations through projects like the Competitive Print Suite. By leveraging smart AI policies and machine learning to display language changes and differences between bills, this tool empowers staff to rapidly understand and analyze critical details in the legislative process so that we here are able to better connect the changes that happen and what goes on, and we're able to discuss that information back with our folks in the district. Looking ahead, the development of the collaborative drafting tool and the committee votes portal holds great promise for streamlining legislative workflows and improving access to critical information. As these projects progress, it is essential that the clerk office collaborates closely with key stakeholders to ensure compatibility, security, and user-friendliness. Finally, as we discuss the funding of modernization initiatives through the dedicated account, we should recognize the progress that has been made forward a range of the Modernization Committee's recommendations. Streamlining bill drafting, amending tracking, electronic access to committee reports, and a lobbying disclosure tool are just among the few things, or many things, of the recommendations that the clerk office has advanced during your time. And while we celebrate the innovations that the clerk's office has helped deliver to the House, we recognize that the office must be strategic in identifying projects that yield the greatest benefits to the House while mitigating potential risks to the House operations and our service to the American people. I look forward to hearing from Acting Clerk McCumber about the progress his office has made and his plans for the continued modernization and improvement of legislative operation. I am sure that together, working with this committee, we will advance the work of all 215 employees. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Without objection, all other members' opening record statements will be made part of the hearing record if they're submitted to the committee clerk by 5 p.m. today. Today we have one witness. We welcome Mr. Kevin McCumber, the acting clerk of the House. Mr. Cumbers began his long tenure with the office of the clerk, starting as a House page in 1996 and becoming deputy clerk in 2021. Mr. McCumber was sworn in as acting clerk of the United States House of Representatives by Speaker Kevin McCarthy in 2023. We appreciate you being with us today and look forward to your testimony. Pursuant to paragraph B of Committee Rule 6, the witness will please stand and raise his right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record show the witness answered in the affirmative. We appreciate you being here today and look forward to your testimony. I'll remind the witness that we've read your written statement and it'll appear in full in the hearing record. I'll now recognize you, Mr. McCumber, for 5 minutes for the purpose of giving an opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Stile, Ranking Member Torres, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. My written testimony details our work supporting the House, so today I'd like to focus on 2 themes I think are front of mind for all of us. First, our support for the House's modernization efforts, and second, how our forward-thinking and mission-driven staff meet increasing legislative demands. I'm especially proud of our team's work with this committee and the former Select Committee on the Modernization of Congress to modernize processes and create new products while maintaining the traditions and practices of the institution. To that end, I'd like to update the committee on the status of some of our major modernization efforts. We're working with the Secretary of the Senate's office to modernize the lobby disclosure system, including creating unique lobbyist ID capabilities based on identity verification, a recommendation by the former Select Committee. We decided to build the system on top of the Senate's recently revamped portion of the system, creating cost savings and efficiencies. This work is a top priority for us and the Senate, and development work is underway. We also look forward to the upcoming launch of an extensive legislative drafting study, examining the nature of collaboration, the effectiveness of current tools, and reviewing potential alternative tools in the marketplace. We are excited to partner with the Office of Legislative Counsel to create a truly collaborative drafting tool and plan to issue an RFP midsummer. We're extremely proud of the success of the Comparative Print Suite, which was recognized internationally just last week for its transformative and innovative additions to the House's existing legislative tools. We are currently creating additional features, such as an upload feature to the bill-to-bill differences tool in the Basic Edition, to enable all staff to compare different versions of drafts provided by Legislative Counsel. We also plan to expand staff access in the Congressional Budget Office, ideally reducing the time needed to produce cost estimates. Additionally, the committee recently approved a procurement abstract we submitted at the end of April to begin work on a centralized committee portal. The portal will feature several modules, the first being a referral management module, which will enable committees to more easily track the bills referred to them. In addition to these ongoing projects, we are considering options to use existing technology to assist offices with gathering co-sponsors. We look forward to working with the committee as we continue developing creative solutions for modernizing the legislative process. Now I'd like to turn to our staff, our most important resource. They provide the support for our modernization efforts and the House's day-to-day operations, and we recruit and retain mission-driven, public service-oriented individuals for our team. We remain flexible to be able to fully support both the House and Senate's legislative schedule. For example, the House has not adjourned for more than 3 days since 2016. While pro forma sessions are only a few minutes long, the generated workload routinely matches that of a full legislative day. Additional flexibility is required to support late-night legislating in the Senate, requiring numerous clerk staff on site to facilitate the enrollment of legislation and delivery to the White House well after the House is adjourned for the day. The volume of legislative work has also increased. 11,252 measures have been introduced as of May 1st, and we have supported 55 committee field assignments so far this Congress, with 10 more scheduled through May. We are on pace to see more measures introduced this Congress than last Congress, which also surpassed the 116th Congress, which was a milestone that hadn't been achieved since 1978, the last year before unlimited additional co-sponsors were allowed. Increased field committee assignments, bill introductions, and late-night floor activity requires us to reprioritize our resources away from other projects, but also offers us opportunities to modernize our processes, like e-hopper workflow management and cross-trained staff in heavily affected divisions. Cross-training also allows us to offer staff opportunities to grow within our organization and pursue long-term careers with us. Given this workload, we strive to offer staff work-life balance without sacrificing the quality of service and high standards we hold ourselves to in supporting the House. Doing so has helped us successfully recruit top-level talent, particularly in the technology field. I want to thank our legislative branch partners and clerk staff. We are especially appreciative of our close collaboration with GPO, the Office of Legislative Counsel, Secretary of the Senate, and the other House officers, and certainly the excellent work of clerk staff, whose work across divisions exemplifies their shared commitment to our mission. Chairman Stile, Ranking Member Torres, members of the committee, we are committed to service and support of this great institution. Thank you again for your continued support and for the opportunity to testify, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you, Mr. McCumber. I will begin our questions today, followed by the ranking member. We'll then alternate between parties. I'll now recognize myself for the purpose of asking questions. Off the cuff, first to say thank you to all of your staff. I know you have over 200 men and women on your staff who work diligently every day. Sometimes people toiling in the weeds here don't get enough appreciation, and so if you would share mine, I think, and the entire committee's appreciation for everyone that's working so diligently. You spoke, I think, very eloquently about the volume of work that's being done by the clerk's office to keep the House of Representatives open and operational and transparent to the American people. I want to dive in just a little bit where Congress, time and again, seems to push right up to deadlines. Not a surprise to anybody. The institution has challenges. You have to navigate that. You commented a little bit about the late nights. Could you just add a little more color about what's going on behind the scenes when legislation comes right up to that deadline, and then there's a push to get that legislation either over to the Senate, or if it's from the Senate to us, over to the White House for signature, what that looks like? Provide a little color there.
Certainly. So, as you mentioned, there are a lot of, especially recently, legislation going right up to the deadline. So we are in regular communication with the leadership staff, committee staff, tracking the progress not only through the House chamber, but through the Senate chamber, trying to prepare enrollments, the enrollment on parchment to head down to the White House, assuming it doesn't get amended over in the Senate. And so there's just a lot of tracking involved outside of the regular day-to-day legislative processing of regular introduced bills and co-sponsors. So once we get the papers back from the Senate that it's passed clean, the enrollment's prepared, and we've sent it around for signature.
Provide a little color on that enrollment process, because I think sometimes the American people are Thank you, Dr. Murphy. But provide a little more information, maybe, or a little color, as I just said, on what that actually looks like. Because I know sometimes the American people look and say that the House passed it or the Senate passed it. Why is it not law 3 minutes later?
So we have 4 very talented enrolling clerks in the clerk's office, and they take the bill as it's passed both the House and Senate, print it on parchment, and then they read it character by character to ensure complete accuracy, down to the dashes and the commas and the semicolons. And once that is matched up, then it's released and sent around for signature. So we also, for the big bills, GPO, we'll do team reading, so we will prepare the enrollment to send down to GPO for them to team read overnight most of the time and have it back by 9 a.m. the next day so that it is ready to move the minute the Senate takes action and we have the final bill. Thank you.
Let me jump back up from that into another area where I think we've done some actually great work on the modernization side. I know Mr. Kilmer and Ms. Bice have done great work on modernization. A little bit as you described that makes me think that we have a moment there where we could look at a little bit of modernization there. But let me come back to where I think we have done some great modernization as it works to the clerk's office. In particular, the e-hopper, bill introduction. Can you just provide a little more information as to the work that the clerk's office done in the modernization of that process?
Certainly. So we took it out of the email-based, where you would send an email to a dedicated email address. We moved it to an online application where it's a lot easier. There's step-by-step processing. In February of this year, we introduced the ability for members and staff to add co-sponsors electronically. And then just this past Friday, which will certainly improve the bill clerk and our internal efficiencies, we have supplied the ability for the system to automatically ingest co-sponsors as they are added by you. So pre-Friday, we would have to hand enter all of the co-sponsors that were submitted. So upwards of nearly 200,000 this Congress we're anticipating. So we would have to hand key those entries into LIMS for that to be processed. Now, we print it out, there's a little code at the bottom, we put the code in the system and it paints the screen with all the co-sponsors. So that is a huge win for us, which will certainly speed up the processing and efficiencies.
Appreciate that. I think we have continued rooms for improvement in the modernization and efficiency of how the institution works. I appreciate the steps you've taken. Appreciate the work Mr. Kilmer and Ms. Bice have done on the subcommittee on modernization. I think there's still areas where we could look to improve, and appreciate your willingness to be innovative in that space, because as we have a real opportunity, I think, both to not only cut costs, to improve transparency, but mostly, I think, to improve the speed of the throughput on some of the processes that we see ongoing here on a regular basis. Final question, you referenced the work that's being done in a pro forma session. Sometimes a pro forma session, people don't even, maybe in the broader public, don't even recognize it's going on because they feel like it's going on in the background. You said the workload is similar. Briefly, could you explain why, and is there an area for improvement there?
So the pro forma sessions usually are 2 to 3 minutes long. The e-hopper, as you know, makes it a lot easier for bills to be introduced, and so we're seeing 30, 40 bills introduced during a pro forma session where previously we would see a handful. And so that takes time to enter, for the parliamentarians to refer them, and then for us to finish the processing. So it's the members' ability to do that, and we process them as received, so.
Thank you for your testimony today. Again, I know there's over 200 people that do a lot of great work behind the scenes. We appreciate, for any of them here or listening, we appreciate the work you do, and if you'd share our appreciation with them, that would be appreciated by me. Again, on the modernization side, I think we've done some great work. I think there's more work to be done, but mostly appreciate your willingness to engage to find areas to improve efficiency. I yield back, and I'll now recognize the ranking member, Ms. Torres, for 5 minutes for the purpose of asking questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. McCumber, our offices have had a lot of challenges in the 118th Congress, including 15 vacancies, 2 speaker votes. Can you talk a little bit about the challenges that your office faces in having to oversee those offices, given the lack of staff often left in that office and the large number of correspondence that comes through from constituents as well as casework? How is your office able to manage all of that?
Thank you for the question. So currently we have 3 clerk staff who support vacant offices. As you know, we can have upwards of 10 offices at a time. Right now we have 5, and we work with the existing staff in the offices to ensure both they are supported as well as the constituents receive the casework assistance that they deserve and that they require. And so we interact with the staff to fulfill anything from regular office supplies to constituents emailing me directly looking for assistance, and we get them in touch with the right folks. Right now, our staff is adequate to support the needs of the vacant offices, and again, we just provide the assistance and support that the vacant offices need in order to do their work, but we rely a lot on the existing staff to continue their day-to-day services. We don't come in and take over. It's the same policies that were in place at the time of the vacancy remain in place. We just offer the assistance that they need to be able to continue their service.
Quite a few of us on this committee are authorizers as well as appropriators. Are there any changes or additional support? You said that the 3 staff is sufficient, but is there anything else that we can help provide so that the constituents back home for those offices don't see a big change in a vacant office?
I don't think so in terms of vacant offices, but certainly in the modernization area, there's opportunities there.
Okay, and then how does the office handle the records, the transition records from the outgoing office to the incoming new member that gets sworn in, like the one that was sworn in last night?
So at the time of the vacancy, we communicate with the existing casework to see if they would like that casework to remain with the vacant office to be turned over to the successor, or if they would like the case closed and returned to them. And so the casework is up to the constituent as to how they would like that to proceed, and then the members' papers are up to them as to how they would like to,
So who communicates with the constituent? Is it the staff that is left in that vacant office or your office directly?
It is a letter from our office, but it's sent through the vacant office. So
Okay,
it's a
utilizing
communication
the
from me.
staff that is left behind
Exactly.
in that office. Okay. What are some of the other challenges that you have? Would you say that this is a historical number of resignations that we have seen, or is it feast or famine? Does it happen in every Congress? I mean, I've been here 5 Congresses. I've never seen this many vacancies happen in one Congress.
I would say recently it's pretty average.
Okay.
We had none for a 24-hour period in December, and then within 4 months, we have 6, and so it really is kind of a feast or famine, and we just roll with it as it comes.
Great. And as a former 911 dispatcher, you certainly know how to balance multiple balls in the air. So thank you, Chairman. I'm going to yield back.
The gentlelady yields. Now recognize myself for 5 minutes for questions. And Ms. Clerk, thank you for being here. We appreciate the time. It's been since 2019 that the clerk's office has come and testified to us. And since then, I know your team has been very busy and acted on several of the select committee recommendations and added new tools to help member offices, upgraded the systems used by the House community. Can you briefly just touch on some of the more significant changes that's been made to improve the legislative capacity of your office?
Certainly. So the e-hopper has been the, I think, biggest achievement, also the biggest change to the way the legislative process works in the House. It was designed over a weekend at the start in April of 2020. Those of us who are used to working full-time in the office 5 days a week suddenly found ourselves having to learn how to use Teams and laptops that we were recently provided. But we came up with the e-hopper as it was originally designed to help meet the needs of the Congress to ensure that bills and co-sponsors could be introduced when the members wanted them. So I think the e-hopper is the biggest change that we've seen, and certainly is a contributor to the amount of bills that we see introduced. The comparative print suite, I think, is also a game changer for those that utilize it. It was a long project, but the product itself is excellent and provides a much-needed comparative tool for both members and staff to be able to more easily do their work and understand the changes in bill texts.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. And I want to kind of follow a little bit of the questioning of Ms. Torres regarding the transition and records and all this, but I want to ask you, because we've run into some issues, and I want to get a better understanding of how you handle records from, let's say, one committee or a select committee onto the next Congress. What records are deemed that should be preserved, maybe hearing records or any investigative stuff, versus who makes the decision of what to be preserved and what isn't? Are there guidelines for that? Can you kind of give us an idea of how you handle that?
There are House rules. There are certainly guidelines, recommended documents that should be preserved. However, we archive what the committee decides to give us for record keeping. So we're not policing anything or
Right.
Following up in that. But
So do you have specific guidelines that, as a subcommittee chairman, that at the end of this Congress that you would provide to the chairman or the staff to specify what I should be preserving?
yes, so our Office of Art and Archives will come and meet with you and others on what documents should be.
Okay, but ultimately it's the chairman's decision on what should be preserved and whatnot. Can you then tell me what happens to those documents that are preserved?
So they are kept on the Hill, available for 2 Congresses before they are sent down to the legislative archives. So they are more easily retrievable for
Right.
really no other reason.
Is there a particular time period that you keep the records in-house?
2 Congresses, so I believe 4 years.
Oh, okay, so, yeah, so about 4 years. They're here, they're easily archivable, and if there was something that, let's say, that another member or a committee chairman was looking for, they could come to your office and request?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. I appreciate that. It helps clarify some things, but back to your role, are there any particular steps that this committee can take to help improve the function of your office that aren't already being undertaken? So,
I will say that I really enjoy the close collaboration that we have with the staff, and certainly have the support that we need to be able to continue to meet the needs that you guys are requesting. And so I think just a continued support for our ongoing projects, and certainly the flexibility that we have to be able to meet any changing needs that you have.
okay. Well, thank you and appreciate the work that you do. I know it's overwhelming at times, but it is very important and very critical. At this time, I recognize the gentlelady from Alabama for 5 minutes.
Thank you, and thank you so much, the clerk and your whole staff, for all the work that you do. When you think about the fact that this office has been around since 1789 and really has had to flow with the current changes that have happened over that time, I can only imagine that the day in and day out function can be daunting at times. Having served as a teller recently, I never thought counting votes would be so hard. I have newfound respect for that particular task that you all undertake. You know, during the first session of the 118th Congress, you mentioned in your testimony that the clerk's office processed 8,036 bills and hand-keyed the names of over 103,000 co-sponsors. How do you ensure that you are capturing accurately all of that information?
So prior to the rollout of the new feature that we unveiled on Friday, our staff has a thorough proofreading process. We trust that what members send into us is what they intend to have added to a bill as a co-sponsor. So we enter it, we proof it on our side, and then we proof it the next morning when the record is produced to make sure that it was captured accurately. The rollout Monday was the first day of the new ingestion tool that we have. It is a game changer and certainly has made the process a lot more efficient on our side and leaves no room for our human error that might enter into the mix. So,
How hard was that rollout, and any lessons learned of how you can improve it?
so our team works under a 2-week sprint cycle along with our vendors. So every 2 weeks we have improvements to the products that we're working on. And so Friday's release had updates to the comparative print suite as well as the eHopper, that any sort of issues that we experience, let's say the bill clerks would have experienced on Monday, they can be addressed quickly and released either in a hot release or in the next sprint cycle. So it's a way for us to be able to address any unintended consequences of a rollout
Yeah.
very quickly instead of waiting until the product is completed.
So have you guys foresee any advancements in eHopper, that this process of reviewing every 2 weeks, are there some ways that we can enhance the process? I know it's been a game changer in a lot of ways, but I'm sure that there are things that we could do to enhance it.
And there are certainly additional opportunities we have. Right now, your staff are completing single subject statement and constitutional authority statements as separate documents and uploaded and submitted to the eHopper. So we're discussing ways that we can make that an in-app generated document as well, so that you're no longer having to scan and upload. It's just part of the process as if you're introducing a bill or adding co-sponsors. So making that a little more seamless. There's endless opportunities, and certainly welcome feedback from you and your staff on what you'd like to see in the tool.
Very good. Talk to us a little bit about the committee portal and voting, and what, I know that you're in the midst of developing a committee portal to provide central location for committee documents and tasks. Where does that process stand, and what key features and functionalities would be included in the initial release?
So right now, we are working on, we just received the funding for it. We are, there are a lot of opportunities within the committee portal that we see to help committee clerks do their work. All of the effort that went into this morning's hearing, scheduling the official reporters and the House Recording Studio, making that part of the committee portal. The first tool out of the gate is going to be the committee referral management tool, which will allow committees to better track legislation that was referred to them. We're also preparing to do a committee votes database, which addresses one of the select committee's recommendations, where that committee votes are then created as data and more accessible and easily uploaded online. We have goals to rewrite docs.house.gov and
That's a very ambitious goal.
yes, and include that as part of the committee portal, which
Yeah.
again will help with a lot of the data entry that the committee staff are doing. Witness management tools, just managing all the committee's needs through that portal, one-stop shop, if you will, for that.
Well, we look forward to working with you and trying to make that process more efficient and getting a portal system that really would work. So again, I want to thank you and your staff for all that you do.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yield back the balance.
The gentlelady yields back now. Recognize Dr. Murphy for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. McCumber, for coming today. You have a job that I don't envy anybody, but trying to keep a bunch of cats running in the right direction. I think it's great. So I just want to give up some of my personal experience. I'm not a prolific bill writer, but we try to make our substance quality, not quantity. And I've had some problems still regarding getting staff, getting bills written. One of my healthcare proposals took about 4 months to come back from the House Office of Legislative Counsel. And it's my understanding there's been a substantial increase in the number of requests as in bills and stuff. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes, sir.
All right, so I would like to show a little, because I asked my chief and I asked my LD, what's going on here? Where are all these bills coming from? I got a little poster here, and I found out that, here, bring it over here if you can, that most of the people have just a few, I would say a few is under 50 or 60, 70 bills. We have one person that likes to write a bill every other day or every day. And I won't name that person other than it being, well, I'll be nice. It's a Republican member, and I'm not sure what he thinks the whole world needs to be rewritten in time. But I think this is an abuse of the system personally. And I would be very interested to know, does he have like a legislative staff or two assigned directly to him? Does he write his own bills or whatever? But I would think that this person would be a major outlier and an extreme burden to your legislative staff. Is that fair? Do you ever see this discrepancy?
That was a unique situation there. My understanding, if we're talking about the same instance this Congress, the 500 bills were introduced on one day, and none of them were used, none of those bills utilized the Office of Legislative Counsel.
So he wrote his own bills?
Correct. And those were all submitted in Word documents, which then
In
needed to
one
be-
day?
Correct.
I'm going to let everybody try to figure out who that is. So, okay, all right, thank you. I just was shaking my head, and I said, this is ridiculous. And I'm glad to hear that you guys had to be involved. How many legislative staff do you guys have writing bills?
Just to be clear, for the Office of Legislative Counsel, that's outside of the clerk's office.
Yeah.
And so I would defer to that team for how many staff they have, but we have 22, 23 folks on our legislative operations team who just process everything once it's
Yeah.
been introduced or managed on the floor.
Well, our job here, some people think the only job is to write bills. I don't. I personally think we have a lot of other duties to attend to. So I would ask one other question, and I think, with Chairman Stiles and Mr. Kilmer's work on trying for efficiency and everything in the House, I think we're going to really need to, good, bad, or indifferent, really embrace artificial intelligence when it comes to looking at some of these documents. You were talking about how you have people that are literally reading word for word, dash for dash. I'm not here to replace anybody, but boy, adding efficiency to the system. I look in medicine and I look at pathology, I look at radiology. There are going to be absolute efficiencies that will be gained with that. So I'm just interested, do you guys have any thought about that? Has that been on your plate at all?
I think we can certainly use AI as a tool in our toolbox. But
tool.
the need and then for everything that we're producing law and sending the bill down to the president for signature, and so it has to be right all the time. There's certainly ways that we could teach the AI tool to be able to look for certain things, but at the end of the day, the human has to be involved.
Yeah,
So certainly would take baby steps with it, but
Yeah.
me and my team, we are certainly open to it. We have discussions quite regularly about how we can utilize tools to
Sure.
make us more efficient.
It's just literally a word formatting document or just looking for grammar and those type of things. But it is something I think that we're going to have to deal with. But I don't like the whole term, and I've said this now 1,000 times, and I'll say it 10 million more, of the human in the loop. I don't like that. We're holding the loop, and we get to control what it does for us. So
Yes, sir.
anyway, congratulations on your job. Not that I want this one, but I don't want yours either. So thank you. I'll yield back.
Thank you.
The gentleman yields. Now recognize Mr. Kilmer for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. McCumber, for being with us. And I really want to thank you for the work of you and your team in implementing a lot of the recommendations from the Select Committee on the Modernization of Congress, the deconfliction tool, in hopes of making it a little bit easier for members to show up and have one hearing at a time rather than having to invite their clone to work. The comparative print suite to allow comparison of different draft pieces of legislation, I think, is valuable. You've talked about the e-hopper function and what that will mean in terms of just ease of getting co-sponsors signed on and bill introduction. So thank you for that. I think it really matters. I want to touch on a few other outstanding Select Committee recommendations in your purview. And first, I want to talk about the work you've been doing on collaborative drafting. The Select Committee recommended a tool that would allow members and committees and their Senate counterparts and other stakeholders to jointly work on draft legislative text together. Earlier in the year, in partnership with the Clerk's Office and the Office of Leg Counsel, in partnership with the Clerk's Office, the Office of Leg Counsel sort of rolled out basically a Word document where they could use track changes features to achieve some of the goals in the interim. Just any update on where things stand with the development of a tool in this regard, and any feedback you've received so far on the Word version change?
So right now, we're preparing for procurement and to issue an RFI for that collaborative drafting tool, and we plan to schedule a vendor day soon to discuss the opportunities that we have there. I have not received any direct feedback. I know Wade and his team appreciate the collaborative nature of the Word doc. It makes their final work product easier to do.
Yeah.
And I will say that when rolling out that Word document and locking down the PDF to further edits, that has saved time on the processing end. GPO is no longer having to do that comparison against the PDF versus the electronic file, because we are assured there's no changes. So it's all been a positive there.
Good. I know Ms. Sewell mentioned the committee portal. I think we have high hopes that that can address several of the open Select Committee recommendations. I know you touched on this already, but I'm just curious if you can give an update both on where things stand in that regard, but also I think it's valuable for the committee to hear some of the different features that you envision the portal having and explain how they will impact congressional committees' work.
So currently, we are in the final procurement stages for the committee portal. Once the vendor's been notified about the award and the purchase order has been cut, we can hold a kickoff meeting with them. We have a lot of ideas, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, about the uses of the committee portal. Certainly, the list of bills have referred as the first module out of the gate that we have planned. Collecting committee votes for data. We envision the portal to become a replacement for the data entry the committee staff have to do. We see long-term it being a place for committee staff to coordinate the meeting logistics and information with both our office and the CAO for recording studio, official reporters, et cetera, and then eventually see it as a place for the committees to manage their subcommittee membership and other legislative business, such as witness management, the interactions that are currently taking place right now between the committee staff and our Legislative Resource Center staff to get the committee actions up on congress.gov, eliminating that email traffic and just giving folks the tools to be able to do it when they need to ensure that it's online and in a timely manner.
Great. I'm hoping in the time we have left, both the committee portal and the collaborative drafting tool are, I think, really important projects, and I think you've done a good job of explaining why they matter. Can you comment on the role of the Modernization Initiatives account in terms of progress on these projects and other things that are in your purview that you're trying to get done? We're in appropriation season, and I want to make sure we underscore the role that the Modernization Initiatives account plays in supporting both those projects and others.
This specific account has been critical for us to be able to fund these initiatives. These are member-driven projects that we are able to address outside of the regular budget preparation requests that we have. And so that initial money to be able to get these projects kicked off and then build out years into our budget going forward is how we approached it in this budget preparation cycle. And so it's been it's been really critical for us to be able to have those funds available to be able to initiate these projects when we were able to. So
Thanks.
it's been a
We'll
big
keep,
positive.
we'll keep fighting to see that account populated so you can do more good for the institution.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. I appreciate it. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Ms. Bice is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And following up on my colleague on appropriations as well, we had a great conversation in the Ledge Branch approps hearing week before last as it relates to the Modernization Initiative account. But I want to follow up. You mentioned in that hearing that the largest increase in the line item for modernization projects, some of which have received that initial funding from the MIA account. What projects are these funds being used for, either to continue the projects or to maintain those projects that are currently under process?
So for our LIMS work, that is a continuation of funding, as well as the comparative print suite, that's sustainment and modification, user request, and other modification requests that we receive, the maintenance piece. The funding for the initial start of the project is the committee portal, the collaborative drafting tool, and that's really where those funds are set for.
Perfect. You've requested $800,000 from the MIA account to conduct research and analysis to determine the next steps for XMetal. Can you share what an upgrade of XMetal will provide to the House community? And this may have sort of been touched on, but I'd love a little bit more.
Certainly, it will offer the better collaborative tools we envision for both members to talk to each other, members and staff, members and outside organizations. But really, XMetal, if you've used it, it is clunky and outdated, and we use it in the clerk's office, and when we're producing big bills, it's a time waste and it's challenging. Certainly Appropriations Committee uses it a lot when they're under deadlines to create big bills, and so the goal is to have a more efficient and faster system that will enable everybody to do their work better. So it's not a big shiny object project, but it will make a world of difference to the underlying foundation of how we do work.
Perfect, thank you. And I want to also just mention, you've done, I think, a tremendous amount of work already in some of the initiatives that the Select Committee had put forward, and then certainly what we're looking to do this Congress and hopefully next. So thank you for your interest in, I think the committee deconfliction tool was mentioned by my colleague, Mr. Kilmer, and I hope that clerks in other committees will utilize this tool so that those of us that have several committees and even more subcommittees are not having to run from place to place to be able to testify and or question witnesses in hearings. So that's a shout out to all the clerks out there. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about AI and data governance, which is something I know that your office has been looking into. We both agree that we need some sort of formal governance framework. You mentioned the potential use case for AI with legislative drafting and management of some data sets. Can you share a bit more about testing that should be taking place before the implementation of that technology?
We would want to make sure that everything is thoroughly tested before it's introduced into the legislative process. Certainly, we don't want anything to be, any damage to be done based on any sort of tool. So like everything, we would make sure it fits into the legislative ecosystem appropriately and has gone through the thorough vetting and testing that's necessary for it to be able to be useful to everybody.
I think in a roundtable we had, one of the things that I think stuck out the most to me is the fact that it's sort of input in, input out, and the data sets that are being utilized need to be vetted carefully so we make sure that everything that's being used is factually correct, is accurate, has sort of resources to back it up, and so thank you for mentioning that. The last thing I want to ask is about staff. Can you talk a little bit about how many staffers that you believe to be maybe 5 years out from retirement, and what are you doing for sort of succession planning for those key roles that you may have looking for retirement in the future?
So we have identified the mission-critical staff and have succession plans in place. We utilize cross-training and place a big emphasis on cross-training, as well as documentation. So one of the projects that a former former clerk embarked on was making sure we had job manuals for each of our jobs so that we could reference them when we lose staff who have been here 35, 40 years. They walk out with all of that institutional knowledge. So the ability for us to capture that and make it available, I use those manuals from time to time, especially when it comes to enrolling type issues that come up, and so they've been extremely valuable and something that we place a big emphasis on still.
Acting Clerk, thank you for being with us this morning. I look forward to continuing to work with you on these modernization initiatives with my colleague across the aisle. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield.
The gentlewoman yields back. Mr. Carey is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and also to the witness. I want to tell you up front, your testimony, when you're looking at me, I'm actually not crying, but the hay fever season is really amongst me, so you're not saying anything that's really disappointing me. But I do want to transition a bit because this is a very big area for me. I know your testimony touched on it, the Office of Art and Archives. Can you share a little bit about since we're hitting the 20th anniversary of the oral history program within the House Historian, are there any actions that you're planning to recognize this benchmark?
We've talked about a recognition. We haven't ironed out any details yet, but we certainly don't want the opportunity to pass us by in recognition of that.
And maybe can you just expand on what that oral history program is, because I think it's very interesting.
As do I. I actually find myself, we have new staff in the office, I refer them to some of those videos to be able to hear from their colleagues of the past on what their experiences were and certainly how they can build on the work that's been done. The historian and the Office of the Historian identify key figures from the House's history that they believe the House would benefit from institutionally from having their experiences recorded and made available. And so they do all of that preliminary work, and then they schedule interviews, and they have the professional staff that do it and document their experiences. And it's a...
Can you also maybe share a little bit about what kind of public access there is to those resources?
Certainly, they are all available on the historian's website, history.house.gov, under the Oral History Project, so they are available to everyone.
I would just say to all my colleagues, if they have not had the opportunity to do that, it's kind of like voices from the past. And but with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I agree.
Gentleman yields back. Mr. D'Esposito is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, sir. Thanks for being here. I wanted to talk briefly about your role in vehicle management on the campus. So what vehicles are under the management of your office?
Currently, we have 8 vehicles that we hold the leases for. 6 are under the purview of the Sergeant at Arms, and the clerk's office uses 2 vehicles.
Okay, and the use of those vehicles, the responsibilities of those assigned are?
So the one vehicle is for the clerk's daily use to and from campus, and the other one is reserved for deliveries to the White House for legislation, as well as the Federal Register for other pieces of legislation.
Okay, and those are the only vehicles that you oversee?
Correct.
8 total?
2, really. We hold the leases for 8. 6 are given to the Sergeant at Arms under his vehicle use policies, and then 2 fall under, it's just an administrative management
Okay.
for holding the
And just a
leases.
question, because we've dealt with this in the past in other agencies. So the vehicle policy that you have in your office states that they're only available for official use. Can you just explain exactly what official use is?
Certainly. For the clerk vehicle, it's to and from the office, Monday through Friday. The other vehicle is specifically for official business use, going to the White House, going to the Federal Register. The clerk's office is charged with getting appraisals for certain foreign gifts that are received and need appraisals, and so the vehicle is driven to the appraiser for that purpose. We do have a vehicle log that captures the date, who, time, mileage in, mileage out. That's tracked and regularly recorded.
Great. So, and I know that you also handle, as you just mentioned, the gift appraisal process. I'm not sure if it was touched upon already, but members are allowed to accept gifts of up to, I believe, $415. The clerk does the appraisal of the gifts, and if the appraisals are under, the item is then returned to the member.
That's right. So just last year, the minimum value is assessed every 3 years, and it's up to $480 now.
Okay.
When members receive a gift overseas, if they believe the value might be approaching that amount, we are available for appraisals, as you mentioned, and we provide them with the appraisal, and then it's between the member and the ethics committee as to how if they want to turn it over to us for us to dispose of, or if they want to receive permission to be able to display it in their office.
And how is that value set?
The $480 value? It's set by the GSA.
Okay. And how many, do you know offhand how many gifts from foreign dignitaries members received last year?
I don't have that number in front of me, but
Okay. And if you can, just for us to understand, can you provide what an appropriate gift for a member overseas would accept?
it's not really for me to decide what.
Well, examples that you've
Oh,
seen.
examples, certainly. Rugs, pottery, jewelry, art, plates. It kind of runs the.
Okay. And now, the gifts that aren't able to be taken by the member, you guys take control of, correct?
If the member wishes to dispose of them, they do it through us,
Right.
correct?
And now what then what's the process then for the clerk's office?
Then we work with GSA and excess inventory, or not excess inventory, but we work with GSA to drop off the gifts, and they take it from there.
Okay. Has there ever been any proposals to display items that are of cultural or historical significance?
The ethics committee would be the ones who would have that exchange with the member as to what they wish to do. We just simply provide the appraisal.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your service. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back, and Ms. Bice is recognized for 5 minutes. I apologize. Ms. Lee is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. McCumber, I'd like to return to a discussion about artificial intelligence. I serve as one of the members of the Bipartisan Artificial Intelligence Task Force, and I am particularly interested in how your team is using artificial intelligence in the tools that you provide to the House community. And I'd like to start with the comparative print suite. Can you share more with us about the guardrails you have in place to protect the House data that's used for the comparative print suite?
Certainly. So the only use case that we currently have for artificial intelligence is within the comparative print suite. The suite uses natural language processing, which better assists it to be able to do what it was intended for. And that is the only use of AI that we currently have in practice. The suite is certainly equipped with the appropriate guardrails to ensure that none of the data that's uploaded is accessible, or it's fully secure and stays within the network itself. So that's been thoroughly tested and through all the CAOs, cybersecurity, and all of the appropriate avenues there.
Can you share with us a little bit more about the new features that are there and how they're helping staff?
Bear with me here. That one. So we did, if you pardon the, find my notes here so I can make sure I don't miss anything about it. So all House staff have access to the basic edition, and then they can take the advanced training course to be able to get the advanced edition. So it allows for how an amendment changes a bill. It allows staff to upload amendments drafted by HOLC, view track-like changes of how the amendment would change the underlying bill or resolution. The bill-to-bill differences provision select feature, which is part of the bill-to-bill differences tool, allows staff to select a provision to compare across two bills. So a title or division in a large bill to a standalone smaller bill. It allows for the isolated comparisons of the larger texts. And then, as I mentioned, we're working on adding an upload feature to the basic edition so that all staff have that ability to upload texts, draft texts that they receive from Legislative Council.
Your office also has several ongoing projects to streamline internal processes, including a redesign of the Legislative Information Management System and an update of the floor action reporting system. What impact will these updates and changes have for our House community?
The LIMS project is a multi-year project which is modernizing a system that will allow for additional modules and features and requests to what we like to say will all be able to fall under the LIMS umbrella. So it's built in a way that the current LIMS system makes it very difficult to add new features and new ideas that come out of whether from this committee or the former select committee or from members themselves. It makes it very difficult to add new features. And so the LIMS 2.0 is built in a way that additional modules and features and requests can be added much more easier and kind of live all under that umbrella. So it will better enable us to meet the committee's request for new products and features in a more timely manner.
Do you see artificial intelligence or any other type of emerging technology as potentially playing a role with future updates for these services? And any ideas that you might have about how emerging technology could help improve the back-end systems on how you deliver these types of services to the House?
Certainly, there's a lot of opportunity that AI presents if the data set is built in a controlled way that gives us the tools that we need to ensure that the work is accurate. If it increases our efficiencies, whether it's in the bill drafting or the bill processing end, the enrolling clerks comparing texts, and whatever the case may be, there's certainly opportunities there, and we are in the initial stages along with the CAO on the AI task force in those discussions on how we can kind of all move forward together and make sure that we are advancing the House, but also protecting the vital role that is necessary for that legislative process to make sure that integrity stays intact.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields back. I'd like to thank our witness for appearing before us today. It's been very helpful. Members of the committee may have some additional questions for you, and we ask that you please respond to those questions in writing. Again, appreciate your willingness to continue to engage on the modernization of the clerk's office, and again, share our appreciation for all the men and women that work with you to keep this place open and operational. Without objection, each member will have 5 legislative days to insert additional material into the record or to revise and extend their remarks. If there's no further business, I want to thank the members for their participation. Without objection, the committee stands adjourned.